Hello, everybody. This is Jeff from Whole Life Clinic. We just wanted to kind of keep you up to date. We know that in the news recently, there's been a lot of information, confusing information, mixed messages about this whole idea of the coronavirus. And we here at Whole Life Clinic want to make sure that you have what you need to know to be kind of informed and make good, rational decisions based on what's going to go on here. Um, the coronavirus, I will say, in past years, doing electrodermal testing or doing the AO scan testing, when you see coronavirus, you automatically think, oh, that's just your common cold. No big deal here. Let's move on to something a little more nasty. So, in that circumstance, coronavirus has not been the thing that has been terribly worrying in the past. The particular version that's out there right now is a different thing than we've dealt with in the past. So, we have kind of adapt and update ourselves and kind of get up to speed on what's going on here. So antiviral strategies is something I came up with to say, here's what we need to do to keep ourselves healthy, keep ourselves in a safe zone. So moving into the idea here is that viral epidemics, pandemics have been around for a long time, and they are the most forecasted model of the end of the human species. Every time anybody has took a look at what are the percentage chances that people are going to have a real problem existing on planet, it really comes down to a lot of it is that viruses or other microbes are going to get us. And in investigating this, there's actually some pretty good information out there that say that there are paleontologists who believe that actually the dinosaurs, rather than dying because of a comet hitting the Earth, actually die from a disease model. There became so many of them, and they became so immune weakened by an impact of a comet on the Earth that it was actually the diseases that killed them off the most. Viruses are notoriously difficult to kill. They have an adaptive ability that enables them to, once they get into our cells, reproduce themselves and come out the other end. They are different than when they entered as far as the type or particular mechanisms of killing them. We'll see that here in a little bit. And viral transmission does come from close proximity to other human beings. Contact with saliva, airborne particles, things like that is a commonly known viral transmission mechanism. And as our world becomes more populated, people are moving into more urban centers. As our food sources are handled by more people, indeed, the odds that they are going to spread a virus onto either directly onto us or to our food or other surface areas that we come in contact with, the more likely it is that viral transmission is going to occur. Now, in that circumstance, we also need to pause here and hang on a second. People are very familiar with the name of Pasteur. Louis Pasteur lived in France. He was among the first scientists to identify these little microbes that existed under the newly available microscopes and said, in my theory, if we come in contact with these organisms, this is what makes us ill. And different kinds of organisms give us different illnesses. And we live by that model today. Pasteurization means boiling something until the bugs are all dead. But at the very same time, in the same area, there lived another virologist or pathologist doctor named Antoine Beauchamp. Now, Beauchamp had the idea that, yes, coming in contact with these organisms is indeed the way we might have them in our body, but whether or not somebody got sick from them was more dependent on the terrain, is what he called. So the terrain model is the idea that a healthy body with good nutrition, with proper hydration, with good vigorous ATP production was not susceptible to that organism. Just because you come in contact with it doesn't mean you're going to get sick, as was that model. The two of them argued back and forth at different lectures at the universities. They would present their opinions, and they were always in contrast to one another. And effectively, according to the reports, Pasteur was simply a more charismatic speaker. He was more interesting to listen to, and this is why his view became the predominant one. And so, interestingly, though, on Pasteur's deathbed, he admitted that Beauchamp was right. So we need to concern ourselves not so much, are we going to come in contact with those organisms? It's more of what is the terrain that organism encounters in your body. So in this circumstance, we all realize that we are born with viruses. We get them from our mother. And even very young in life, we start to accumulate them, and more through our lives. We come in contact with all kinds of them. And it's quite arguable that we probably couldn't necessarily live without some of these viruses. They are part of the construction of our DNA, that they're retroviruses that if possible to remove them, our DNA might not function. our immune system actually grows stronger and stronger with each virus that we're able to defeat and suppress. In other words, you develop an antibody, your immune system goes through a process of eliminating or suppressing the virus, and that gains your immune system the ability to work against other things. The febrile diseases, things like the measles and some of the other commonly vaccinated for childhood diseases, are actually how our immune system would develop an anti-cancer kind of profile for leukemia, lymphoma, multiple myeloma. And those people who get those types of cancers often had difficulties acquiring a proper immunity from vaccines. Those people who had developed those diseases of like measles younger in life have virtually no incidence of leukemia, lymphoma, or multiple myeloma. And in fact, now they're actually using the measles vaccine with a modified genetic marker to go attack those very diseases. The new novel coronavirus, otherwise known as the COVID-19, is really no different than any other virus as far as its general life cycle. It's harder to kill, it has some different activity about it, but it still is classified as a virus and will have some of the same ideas about viruses as would all other viruses contain. And of the people who are getting seriously ill or die as a result of the COVID-19, almost all of them are somehow immunocompromised or otherwise weakened. In other words, even the strong individuals that it encounters are generally getting ill, but then they get over it. They are able to conquer it. They're able to get by it by virtue of this. And the question then becomes, which we are not yet aware of, we don't know how this virus behaves yet, is that person who has gone through the COVID once, recovered from it, then immune to it again? Did they build an antibody that's capable of then having them not get it later on? That has not yet been determined by the CDC as of the recording of this on March 9th. So there's something yet to be learned about this. We'll find out in the future. One of the things that I would propose might be a slight problem in China, especially the Wuhan area where this virus supposedly then sort of came from, is that this is one of the most polluted areas in the world. When we're talking about the idea of the terrain model as to how healthy is the body in concern with then the contact with the organism, could the organism be contacting a weak body? Taking a look at these maps of China, these images in China, these people who are encountering this are living in one of those polluted environments on Earth. They have apps on their phones to tell them how much particle matter is in the air every day. The incidence of all kinds of respiratory disorders, asthma, bronchitis, pneumonia, other allergies is increasingly high among this population because of the amount of pollution in the air. And if these fish in the lower left corner died in the river, those people are drinking water derived from that very same river. So how ill are they by virtue of chemical contamination? And then a virus gets them, and then they have this massive widespread instigation of the virus, but as well as then an increased death rate over other areas that they've encountered. So we do need to understand that keeping ourselves clean, keeping ourselves free of toxins may be a strategy against all viruses as far as that's concerned. So viruses cannot reproduce themselves. They are not complete DNA structures. They don't have the ability to sexually reproduce or to mitose and have split one virus into make two viruses. So in that circumstance, they need a host body to replicate. There are four main steps to this process. One is they get into the cell via receptor sites. Receptor sites are little proteins stuck within the lipid membrane of our cells that act like doorways, and they're supposed to be very selective doorways. They're supposed to be able to not be penetrated by things that are bad for us, but we'll learn a little bit later that doesn't happen in case of viruses. Then once inside the cell, RNA transcription using an enzyme in our system called reverse transcriptase. They use our own DNA RNA to make more of themselves because they lack that DNA themselves. And then ribosomal replication occurs, and while this happens, we damage our ATP producing mitochondria. Mitochondria, think of those as the engines of the cell. So when we have these viruses in our cell, they're again using our own components, and while inside the cell, they actually damage the cell's capacity to make its energy, do its work, and can even seriously damage the cell's integrity to the point where the cell dies, implodes. And at that point, that's what we have to understand too, is that once inside the cell, these viruses are protected by our own cell wall, and we have no internal mechanism of dealing with them. There's no immune system within inside the cell. So these viruses are kind of clever in that they get inside the cell where our white blood cells have no influence to be able to take care of them. And so they are only susceptible when they are planktonic, plankton, floating around. In our bloodstream and our lymph, we have plenty of immune capacity to kill them off. But while still in the cell, they are virtually, unable to be acted upon. There are some mechanisms we can use in natural medicine, though. Once the reproduction of these viruses is done, through the case of the mitochondria being damaged and so on, then we have the idea that they exit the cell. Either the cell dies or they're able to get back out through the cell membrane. In that case, they come out mutated. The original form that entered the cell leaves as a slightly changed version of that virus. So that even upon original contact, if you have an antibody for that, the antibody may not work on the mutated virus. So there's a lot of different mechanisms here to the reproduction of these organisms, and it's important that we understand here's what's going on, just so we understand the process. Now, at each step of that discussed, we have the opportunity to introduce nutritional or other natural medicine interventions to either reduce or eliminate the ability of the virus to reproduce. And because of the relatively short life cycle, if we simply stop their ability to reproduce, our virus is going to die off quickly. At that point, each aspect of those 4 different mechanisms of viral reproduction, we can either disrupt or eliminate that process. And if all strategies are used concurrently together as a combination set, viral conditions can go away very quickly. But each step requires each of us to also remember to eat a healthy diet. We need low sugar. Sugar always magnifies every version of infection. We need high nutrient content. We need a lot of vitamins and minerals, amino acids to combat this kind of condition. And we need a whole foods, healthy, high fiber diet. The other thing that people consistently come into the office needing to pay attention to is staying hydrated. Our lymphatic system, which is the primary system that generates the immunity against viruses, is a water-based system. And the less water that's in it, the less capable that system is. So staying hydrated is incredibly crucial to being able to fight viruses. Stress also reduces our immune response by up to 50%. So we also need to take a step back from all of this and realize that we need to set the clock back to 0 stress-wise. We need to encounter a period of time when we are not counting the hours in the day. We don't have any items on our list. There's no cell phones, no television, no sound. We just need to be able to reset that clock back to 0 every day. Not just for the sake of not being stressed. It is literally an immune system booster to do so. So whatever version of meditation, deep breathing, other versions of stress reduction all need to be pursued for the sake of getting our immune systems to not be depleted. Important point that very few people are listening to nowadays. So what one of the initial mechanisms we can do is let's stop the viral entry into the cells. And so what we have to understand is our receptor sites are, again, doorways into the cell. Receptor sites are generally more responsive to proteins, and so these viruses mimic proteins that are normally in our system. In other words, here's a virus and it says, oh, wait a minute, I'm L-alanine. And then the receptor says, oh, well, if you're L-alanine, well, then you can come in. So the idea is that if we can stop the mimicry of that virus to a proper thing and allow our receptor cells to become sort of smarter, we can get that to deny entry of the virus into the cell. Remember, inside the cell, they're incredibly difficult for our immune system to deal with. Outside the cell, still knocking on the door of the receptor site, they're susceptible to our white blood cells killing them off. Now, in this case, vitamin D3 is a modulator of receptor site activity and can effectively make the receptors smarter about what they let into the cell. And so in that idea, vitamin D is one of the greatest antiviral mechanisms we have, which is why viruses tend to be lower in incidence during the summertime months. When people are outside more, they have fewer viruses. There's also the several different herbs and other things that do a very nice, effective job at also working on receptor site intelligence. Licorice, iodine, zinc, lemon balm, also known as melissa, L-lysine, which is an amino acid, grapeseed extract, selenium, all have this capacity to help the receptor sites not being fooled by this process. Then we have the ability to change the transcription. What does transcription mean? That means that incomplete DNA that is carried in by the virus needs to be completed by our own cellular mechanisms, and reverse transcriptase is an enzyme that normally exists within our cells that is tricked into making more of the viruses. Now, in that case, we need to have that reverse transcriptase enzyme either be more selective, or we need to reduce that mechanism so we don't make more of them. So proper methylation is a big thing, and there's a new commonly now identified problem in people's genetic makeup called the MTHFR, methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. And there's groups of people, families and so on, that have gene mutations that leave them less than capable of producing an enzyme, and that enzyme performs the methylation process. So really, to shorten this up, this could be a whole whole webinar on its own as methylation, but it means that people don't use their B vitamins very effectively, and the methyl groups on those B vitamins are sort of used at a small percentage of the potential that they have. So strategies for proper methylation include methylated forms of B vitamins, and realize that many of the B vitamins bought that are inexpensive, over-the-counter B vitamins are not properly methylated. So we need professional grade versions of methylation there. Also, as far as the reverse transcriptase reproduction of vitamins, lipoic acid and alpha lipoic acid are very useful, N-acetylcysteine, glutathione. And if we have increased inflammation in a cell due to NF-kappa B, this can also magnify how much of that reverse transcriptase production of viruses we have. So in this case, things like turmeric, ginger, resveratrol, black pepper extract are all things that reduce NF-kappa B so that our cells are no longer prone to inflammation. Then we've got the idea of the nutritional boost to the mitochondria. Our mitochondria, as I had said, are damaged. And really what it comes to is that cells that produce less mitochondrial ATP look like a victim. They're more easily taken advantage of. These cells are weak, therefore then they are going to get infected first. So in this case, we need to increase the mitochondrial production. So a low carbohydrate diet would be one of the things that would support the mitochondria. Now, you look at the Chinese diet, it's rice, 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 and more rice, and then things with all kinds of syrupy, sweet sauces on them. It's a very high carbohydrate diet. When we look at vitamin D is something that can help promote proper production of the ATP. Vitamin D, yes, this is a repeat. It does come up again. And realistically speaking, you can take up to 10,000 IUs per day very safely. The RDA recommendation is only 500. And that's safe for kids, it's safe for adults, it's safe for virtually anybody. Vitamins A and C, as well as the omega-3 fatty acids, also help with building up the idea of more mitochondrial production. Then we've got glutamine, melatonin, milk thistle, CoQ10, acetyl-L-carnitine, resveratrol, all important components of the sort of chemical cascade that is making fuel into energy in the mitochondria. Plus, again, broad spectrum methylated B vitamins, magnesium, succinic acid, D-ribose. There's a whole bunch of different components that all contribute to this little mechanism of taking fuel and making it into energy in the cell. If we support all of that, then our cells look like less of a victim. And then coming into the idea of creating a strong immune response, how do we get our own immune system to be able to kill off organisms, viruses more specifically, in an increased way? Selenium is one of the main anti-mutagenic nutrients. In other words, what I mentioned, a virus goes into the cell as one form, goes through its replication process, and then as it exits the cell, it's a slightly mutated, harder to kill version. Well, selenium is the thing that stops and prevents that kind of mutagenic activity in those viruses. And by boosting the thymus and other areas of the body that produce antibodies, we generally use antioxidant nutrition. You've all heard the term antioxidant. It basically is something that has a lot of vitamin or mineral or fatty acid content that helps reduce the free radical damage that comes from toxins. So in food, we eat fruits and vegetables that are the most colorful and tropical. And we don't worry about whether or not at this point they have a little bit of extra carbohydrate. The antioxidant benefit is useful here. So those things that are red, orange, yellow, blue, and purple, all those fruits and vegetables that have that colorful aspect to them give us a strong boost to our immune, not only power, but also accuracy with better antibody production. Amino acids are particularly useful in this system to fuel the fight, and L-lysine is one of the primary ones that's used in the immune system for that. And there are many minerals, zinc being probably the most important among them, but there are many minerals that play a role in the enzymatic and other immune responses to infection. So if you look at this, what am I telling you to do? Eat nutrient-dense, healthy foods. This isn't any kind of mystery, but this is the thing that people tend not to do when they're sick with a virus. They want to have all the comfort foods to feel better again. The comfort foods don't have this kind of profile. So we need to turn towards those things like salads and fresh fruits and vegetables and stir fries and things like this, rather than a lot of, pasta and breads and things of that nature, which have virtually no antioxidant profile whatsoever. Now, we can also kill viruses with light. And by light, what I mean is the visible spectrum of light is what we see, but the light refers to frequencies. Frequencies can, and indeed have been proven to, kill viruses. And when we talk about homeopathic remedies are nothing more than really captured frequencies in a bottle. And the particular color of the light is determined by which plant or mineral object was diluted to capture that light. So really what we're looking at here is any variety of homeopathic remedies are developed to be antiviral. And each one is going to activate different body systems based on that light. The frequency captured within that remedy flips a switch in the body, says, hey body, let's produce more lymphocytes, or hey body, let's have the receptors be a little bit more resistant to viral penetration. It goes through the process of engaging the own body's own systems to work harder. And so the frequency that has been more recently captured devices like Rife generators. In other words, what nature had in it in homeopathy, people have mimicked in devices. And we have a true Rife machine in our office that actually is quite good at being able to fight off organisms. It gives them there's that old model of you can hear an opera singer singing a particular note that is the exact same note of the frequency that the wine glass is. So the wine glass shatters because it's being bombarded with its exact same frequency. So in that case, what the Rife machine does is identifies different viral frequencies and outputs the same frequency to them, causing the viruses to implode or break apart. And let's also not forget the sun. UV light on your skin is incredibly useful at not only generating vitamin D3, but UV light from the sun is capable by itself of killing viruses. But one thing we need to remember is we need cholesterol in our skin in order to be able to manufacture the vitamin D. So in that case, people on cholesterol lowering drugs would also be less capable of making that vitamin D3 on their own. So because of this whole thing that's in the news, and we need to be cognizant of the idea that we can support people nutritionally through the process of being preventative against viruses, there's a number of things we put together as a set, as this March's monthly special, to incorporate a lot of those things we just spoke about. Pedro says, let's make our bodies antiviral. So we need to kind of get everybody up and with the idea that let's put a whole bunch of good nutrition in. This is the package that we have. We do have a couple of additional things that we'd add on here. If somebody's really getting ill, somebody has the idea that, that maybe they're getting quite ill with the virus, you could add Mito2 Max or mitochondrial NRG products to increase mitochondrial ATP production. We could add trisomal glutathione to add a high dose glutathione to reduce the viral transcription within the cell. Also, to reduce transcription, either lipoic acid or lipoic acid supreme are very good at supplying that essential fatty acid antioxidant to our system. If we're inflamed and we're concerned that our inflammation is also reducing our immunity, we could add kappa rest or deep blue polyphenol to reduce that inflammation from NF-kappa B. If we're suspicious that methylation may be part of our problem, we could add supermethyl SP as a way to properly boost up our methylation processes by adding more methyl donors. And Licorice Plus is a very good product that includes not only licorice, which we saw also enhances the ability for receptor site resistance of viruses, but also has star anise in there, which has a chemical product called N-anethol, which is one of the most highly antiviral things that you can find in nature. And actually, the makers of Tamiflu mimicked N-anethol when they made their product. So the combination of licorice and star anise does a fantastic job. Now, let me close by saying if somebody actually does suspect that they have the COVID-19 coronavirus, please don't hesitate to go to the hospital and get tested. Natural medicine has a lot of useful things, but natural medicine is based usually on prevention. It's based on let's get healthy first so that we're resistant to the disease rather than saying once I have it, let's catch up and suddenly pound all this stuff in the body and then get over it. Coronavirus is something very serious. It is literally life-threatening and should be taken seriously. My suggestion is take the steps now to be preventative so that you don't ever have to worry about getting it. So that's the close for today. I just wanted to thank everybody for tuning in. If you have any questions, go ahead and give us a call here at our phone number, 952-891-3019, or go to wholelifeclinic.com for more information. Thanks.